Hello, listeners. My name is Cliff Ratza. I'm the author of two ongoing series of novels, the Lightning Brain series and its sequel, the Keeper series. And in addition to being an author and a writing coach, I teach at universities and have a consulting business. If you would like to learn more about me or my books, please contact Prime Solutions via the lightningbrainseries.com website. I try to make videos that I think authors and writers and most people might enjoy listening to. And I try to cover material in a manner that you might not see on the news or in other YouTube or similar videos. I figure that if I can't find something different with a different point of view to say, there's no reason for me to record a video that you can find elsewhere. Well, the title of this video is Popes, Politics, Philosophy, and Plagues. Here's another 4P POV. I would like to connect these four topics in a manner you might not have considered before, and my intention is not to recite a chronological history of each, but rather to do my simple scholar syntopical analysis by synthesizing credible information sources given by subject matter experts in order to give you listeners an overview that will help picture the landscape. And I'll start by sketching an appropriate historical geographic area dating back to the birth of Jesus, and I center it near the eastern shore of the Mediterranean. Think of Jerusalem and Antioch and Alexandria. I chose that geographical location because that is where Christianity and Catholicism and the ensuing succession of popes actually began. To the east is the Middle Eastern Empire of Persia, and it had a monotheistic Zoroastrian religion. And further to the east lie Indian and Chinese and Japanese civilizations dating back even earlier, and each with their own religions. And the continent of Europe at this time had only bands of roaming tribes that had not yet developed. But the birth of Jesus brought tremendous upheaval. His teachings and disciples spread the gospel, which in the vernacular means good speak, throughout the Roman world. And that included Egypt and the Persian empires. By today's sociopolitical standards, the original 12 disciples would be considered radicals. They used all the social media available way back then to spread the word. And most of them were brutally killed by followers of the established religions because of the threats they and this new Christianity posed. But by the time Rome fell in 476 AD or thereabouts, Christianity and its Catholic Church had become a force for the known world to reckon with. And the political struggles among developing city-states eventually split the Catholic Church into two pieces: a Western Orthodox Church controlled by Rome and an Eastern Orthodox Church controlled by Byzantium. It later became Constantinople and today is called Istanbul. the heads of the Catholic Church became known as popes, and they built a formidable bureaucracy that structured a political organization that gave the Catholic Church great wealth and power. And as European tribes and clans banded together and developed, they eventually formed cities and states controlled by rulers and kings who fought over land and resources needed for survival as well as for growth. And all of them used religion to extend their power. So, popes and politics and churches and states were now intertwined for their mutual benefit, which usually didn't help the people. Life in the Dark and Middle Ages was indeed grim, and people clung to the promise of a glorious life after death if they kept the faith of their religion. Popes and secular leaders throughout the centuries would assemble councils to reinterpret the Bible and update beliefs that would maintain their power and control over the people. And these councils also dealt with new problems, like the following. A big problem for popes emerged in the Middle East's 7th century when Muhammad created the Islamic faith. And just like Christianity, its teachings and the rewards it promised for life after death fueled growth and made it a deadly rival. The Crusades of the Middle Ages bear testimony to this. The articles and videos that I found illustrate that popes and priests did what Lord Acton said they might. They used their power, and, as Lord Acton said, absolute power corrupts absolutely. They were more concerned about protecting their power and wealth than protecting their people. For example, popes would sell indulgences for absolution of sins. They'd sell these to royalty. People back then had no time to ponder much about the meaning of life. They were just too busy hanging on to survive. Philosophy and the wisdom of Greece and Rome were kept alive in monasteries. There is a fascinating series of books called The Hinges of History that chronicles all this. Thomas Cahill is the author of this best-selling series of books. Among them are How the Irish Saved Civilization, The Gifts of the Jews, The Wine-Dark Sea, Mysteries of the Middle Ages, and so on and so forth. I have read them, and they provide a wonderful view of what I've just covered. Now here's my simple scholar summary of how philosophy affected the Catholic Church and popes. St. Augustine tried to reconcile Christianity with Plato. And 500 years later, it'd be about 1100 AD, St. Thomas Aquinas and an Islamic scholar by the name of Averroes did likewise for Christianity and Aristotle. And the takeaway from all the above is that smart people finally figured out a better way to live. And that led to the European Renaissance and the Enlightenment movements, starting in about the 14th century. The Catholic Church lost power to new Lutheran and Protestant religions, which corrected some of the abuses of too much church authority. These religions, in turn, brought to life other religions that multiplied even further when people sought a better life in the newly discovered New World, North and South America. Western Europeans became colonizers wherever they went. Africa and India are two prime examples. And I'll pause here because I think you listeners know what happened after that. The Western world became the dominant force on the world stage. Europe became more secular and less spiritual. And that trend continues today. And the United States appears to be following the same trajectory, but later and at a slower pace. And the rest of the world, Africa, India, China, the rest of the world continues shedding the shackles imposed by colonization. The West is no longer the only force driving the world forward. China is challenging America's superpower status. I've listened to many subject matter experts talk about what might unfold as the world accelerates into the coming decades of the 21st century. Opportunities as well as threats await. And I touch on some of them in my other podcasts. I urge all listeners to search for videos or articles that cover some of the topics I've touched on above. Well, what about the last P, namely plagues? Well, bacteria and viruses have been with us throughout the ages. And today's globalization has spread them faster than ever before. So I thought I would list some of the worst. By the way, do you know the names of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse? They are death, destruction, pestilence, and famine. So, plagues are there, and fortunately for us, we have modern medicine to keep them at bay. And please note that plagues become pandemics as civilizations grow and concentrate populations in cities. Note also that in the past, God's wrath on man's evil nature was sometimes blamed for these plagues. And sometimes this would turn people against religion because they would ask, how could a merciful God do this to us? And we should note that plagues and pandemics shape world history. And here are some of the diseases mentioned when you search for articles on plagues and pandemics. Syphilis, cholera, yellow fever and malaria, typhoid fever. And they were spread by wars, trade, and colonization. I'll mention some details regarding the most catastrophic pandemics. The Black Death, one of the bubonic plagues, in 1350 killed half the population of Europe. The Spanish flu of 1918 killed more than 100 million people worldwide. The plague of Justinian, that took place in about 450, ravaged Europe, parts of Asia, and North Africa. And then HIV/AIDS, which surfaced in 1981, continues to this day to be a threat. COVID-19 makes the list too, and it started in 2019. And then there's influenza and the Hong Kong flu pandemics in the years 1956 and then 1968. They are on the list. I'll stop here. I'm sure you get the idea that plagues and pandemics are history-changing events, and we should expect more to come. And I'll end this talk by mentioning the latest outbreak now making the news: monkeypox. Monkeypox infections are spreading around the world. The U.S. reported its first infection a couple of days ago in a man in Massachusetts, but cases have been identified in the United Kingdom, Europe, Canada, and Australia, suggesting the rare virus is spreading outside of the regions in Africa it has mostly been confined to so far. And what is monkeypox? Well, it's a viral infection that causes flu-like symptoms, including fever and aches, alongside a distinctive bumpy rash, which can become itchy. That's according to the World Health Organization. It can be contracted from prolonged close contact with an infected animal or human, and is closely related to the virus that causes smallpox, but so far it's less severe. Most people recover within a few weeks without treatment. However, there are cases in which it has been fatal. The origins of this particular outbreak are unclear, and scientists are searching for clues to explain its spread. Should we be worried? Well, we should always be worried when it comes to pandemics. But while the risk to the public remains very low, the World Health Organization is concerned about the fact that people could spread it unknowingly through contact with others. Milder cases often go undetected. And it's also possible that younger people have not been vaccinated against the much deadlier smallpox could spread it. Smallpox vaccines are at least 85% effective in preventing monkeypox, and the U.S. has stockpiled enough smallpox vaccines to vaccinate the entire population. That would be a drastic step, and it might not be necessary if the current monkeypox outbreak can be successfully contained. And that'll be a test for global cooperation that will largely hinge on lessons learned from COVID. So that'll do it for this video. And all listeners should be thankful for the wonders of modern medicine. I'm certain none of us want to go back to the good old days. News always hypes the negatives. But if you wanted to, you could subscribe to a Nice News daily email, which talks about some of the good things going on, contrary to some of the headlines. The world is probably not going to end tomorrow, and that means I can say goodbye until the next video.